Bridge there, which has now been reconstructed, and you can go under the bridge and you can see the designs carved in the rock. It's from the tomb of his mother. Not his actual mother, his stepmother, but he hated her. Her tomb was originally at Jongdong. That's why it's called. Got that name for it. And no Koreans didn't want to live there. Only very poor Koreans lived in that area. All the Yangban, the nobles, they wouldn't live there. There's a bad fortune. So when the American ambassador came in from Incheon, and hello, I'm ambassador from America. The Korean said, oh, you live over here. And we got some nice land for you, very nice land. Right there for you. And later the British, the French, the Germans, the Russians, they all concentrated. Jongdong neighborhood, we do a hippie Korea tour there sometimes. Walk around the neighborhood, join us sometime. It's great. All the actual old buildings from 1880, 1890, old buildings are still there. Many of them are now museums, little small museums. The first school for boys, the first modern school for boys built by Christian missionaries, the school that Lee Suk-man, first president of Korea, attended that school as a boy, the Pai Chai School. It's there, still there. The first school for girls in all of Korean history, the only school for girls that was ever built, the Simpson School for Girls, 1886. It's still there. It's a museum. You can see many of the greatest women of 20th century Korea started as students in that school, learning, and became feminists, became leaders. The first Korean university professor, the first Korean university president, they all went to that school for girls. Jongdong neighborhood, it's a fascinating place, just behind Doksu Palace. Walk around there sometime, take a tour, or just go by yourself. Great thing. Gojong runs from Doksu Palace through Jongdong neighborhood, escaped to the Russian embassy, and actually lived there for 14 months. With the Russians protecting him from the Japanese. How humiliating is this, that your king has to live in a foreign embassy to be protected? His own soldiers could not protect him from the Japanese, these Japanese gangsters, these Black Dragon guys. He had to hide in the Russian embassy for 14 months. During that time, again, he's still doing politics. The Russians got a lot of influence over him, of course. During that time, telling him about things, and the Germans also. Germans played a fair role. Mr. Mollendorf, look up Mollendorf from Germany, who played a lot of political role at that time. But the other foreigners were all around then. The Americans, the French, the Germans, they all had their embassies in that neighborhood, right around the Russian embassy. And dealing with Kojong, he was dealing with them, trying to get help. But attempts to get help against Japan from Western nations continuously failed, although the missionaries tried. Gojong wanted guns. He wanted bullets. He kept begging to London, Paris, Washington, D.C., help me. I'll give you money, but send me guns. They would not send guns. The American missionaries, British missionaries, and such, they tried to help. They really did. They sent letters to Washington, D.C., to the president, to senators, said, come on, help Korea. They're good people. They're good Christians. They're enthusiastic Christians. Our churches are full of people. Koreans are praying for salvation from Japan, just like Moses got liberation from Egypt. Moses and such. God should help the Koreans. Actually, the missionaries promised Koreans. They promised them. They said, if you be good Christians, you pray, God will help you. Jesus will come here and save Korea. And he'll do it. Jesus will do it with the American army. Jesus will cause the American Navy to sail over here with soldiers and guns, and they will save you. Keep praying. And the missionaries kept writing letters to America saying, come on, help. But no help. The people in Washington, D.C. would not help. They didn't really care about Korea. Simply, they didn't know about Korea. They didn't care about Korea. They would not send any guns. Neither would the Europeans. They would not. And such. And Jesus did not come to help Korea. Koreans were very disappointed after this. During the 1910s and 1920s, there was a lot of disappointment. There was a lot of saying, hey, you said God would save us. There was whoa, later he will. I mean, just wait later. next decade. Jesus will surely come. Keep praying. But it did not happen. Finally, General MacArthur came with the U.S. military. But that was much, much later. Now, this failed. Independence Club, Philip Jason, the very first Korean American. The first Korean American. Philip Jason, who Koreans call Soo Jae-pil. Led the Independence Club, saying Korea should declare independence. We're not talking about Japan. What he meant was Korea declare independence against China. Finally, to finish the older brother, younger brother relationship, the tributary relationship, to say, now Korea has nothing to do with China. Korea is an independent country, and our king should become an emperor, to be equal to Emperor of China, Emperor of Japan, Emperor of Korea, and he should have a modern government, a parliament, a national assembly. Japan had already done that, imitating the British parliament. Have a modern government going under this. This was the Independence Club. 1896, they got this victory. They made the Independence Gate. By 1897, 1 year later, King Kojong becomes Emperor Gwangmu. Korea declared its independence from China and built monuments to celebrate that, and there was an official ceremony in the palace in Doksu Palace, where Kojong became Emperor Gwangmu. The Russians supported this, the Germans supported this. They wanted this because they wanted to take over Korea. And so Korea to be independent from China was necessary as the first step. They could not take over Korea if China was already the older brother of both Japan and Russia. They wanted to be the older brother of Korea and replace China. So first, Koreans had to declare their independence from China. That was necessary. It was perhaps a mistake. The Independence Gate was built to celebrate this independence from China, and also Korea built a Temple of Heaven. You don't have time to go into. In Mr. Sunshine, they use this image all the time in the introduction and such. Remember, they always show him many, many times in the drama when he's in New York City. He's walking in New York City to the Brooklyn Bridge, very famous, with the Statue of Liberty over here, the Brooklyn Bridge, and he said, I'm an American. I'm an American citizen. And he walks into the gateway to the Brooklyn Bridge, but then he comes out of this gate. But I belong here in Joseon, fighting for Joseon, and such. They show this again and again and again during the series, and such. He's coming out of the Independence Gate. This is a real gate. We do Hippie Korea tour there several times already too. The Independence Park, it's at the Sudaemun area, Sudaemun intersection, and there's a whole Independence Park. It's called the Dongnipmun in Korean, and the Dongnipmun subway station and the Dongnip Kongwan Independence Park next to the Sudaemun prison. This is the actual gate. My photo. This is the old Chinese gate. It's the old gate of the ambassadors to China, and that's only the stone pillars remain. They burned all the top part of it, and the remaining, and then right behind it they built this modern, very European style. They were copying the French Arc de Triomphe gate. They built this. You can go see this. It's a great thing. This is when they first built it. This is how this actually looked. Look, there's no trees left on Inwangsan. They cut down all the trees by that time, ruined the landscape of this lonely area. That was the road they had, and that's how the gate actually looked at first. The gate is very notable for having this at the top. It says in Chinese characters, Dongnipmun, Independence Gate. But on the side are depictions of the Korean flag, the Taegukgi. This is the oldest that we have. From 1897, there were some cloth copies of this made before, but they got destroyed by history. They were burned. They were lost somehow. This is the oldest depiction we have of this design that became the Taegukgi flag of the Republic of Korea. So that's very historic, very important. They put that up there already. They're choosing that symbols. Here, this is if you go to Jongdong neighborhood, this is the actual building where they signed the treaties, such as the Ulsa Treaty, which gave Korea to Japan. Later, it was actually in this building for a long time, for nearly 100 years. Koreans kept more than 50 years, Koreans has kept this building closed down, shut down, with a fence around it. Nobody could see it because they hate this building. This is the building of shame, where the traitors, the 5 traitors and then the 7 traitors, signed the documents with Japan. King Kojong used this building as a diplomatic building. It was part of the back part of the Doksugun Palace, part of the rear part of the palace at that time, kind of a modern Western building, as you see. But this is where all the really bad stuff. Then 10 years ago, they did reopen this. They reconstructed it, refurbished, reopened this, and now you can visit this building. There's a very famous Chuatang restaurant. Chuatang, a small fish thing, the most famous one in Korea, the Namwon Chuatang restaurant is right in front of it. Right in front, so a line of people standing there, right in front. But you can go in and see that. It's a museum now. It's a museum, and you can see in there old photos and modern recreation of like King Kojong and the traders and his Prince Sunjong, who became the king, and it said all those characters of that time. And we do that on the Jungdong tour. Nearby, the Japanese built the first modern prison at it. When it first opened, it was very modern and very high class and much, much better than Korean prisons. Clean and sanitary and with modern food system and air heating in the winter and it's air circulation, all this. Now today that is also a museum, and it's all about the Korean independence movement, and Yu Gwan-soon died here, and they memorialize her, and later Korean democracy activists in the 1960s, 70s, 80s were also locked in here by the modern Korean government. Mr. Kim Dae-jung spent a couple of years in this prison, locked up. Mr. Kim Dae-jung, later he became president of Korea, a symbol of democracy. It's a very historic place for Korea. Now, let's get to him. Lee Won-rong, a person you'd say maybe the most hated Korean person by Koreans, the man they hate the most of Korean people. As such, he was, in his early days, he was pro-modernization, and you can't blame him. Early, 1880s or so, he wanted a modern Korea. He wanted electricity, he wanted factories, he wanted roads, train, things like this. He wanted to modernize Korea, and he was very frustrated that the Daewon-gun and the Joseon Dynasty government, that they kept saying, no, we will not modernize, no, we keep our own way, we will not. He was very frustrated, and he ended up joining the Japanese side, being a Korean government minister, but being pro-Japan, of saying, this is the only way that Korea can modernize. The Korean Yangban, the aristocrats, the royal government, they will not change. The only thing we can do, finally, is to have Japan take over. That's the only way we can become a modern country. Koreans hate him for this. Many American Christian missionaries really hated him, opposed him, against him for this. Now in Mr. Sunshine, again, because of modern problems about the family and about defamation and censorship and all, they had to totally change the name. They made him Lee Won-ik. And they combined 2 different people, 2 different figures from the past to make this one character in Mr. Sunshine, but it really represents him. He was a founding member of the Independence Club, right alongside Soo Jae-pil. He was a founding member in 1896 to say Korea should be modern, should be independent from China. Soo Jae-pil was always his friend and never criticized him afterwards for what he did with the Ulsa Treaty and all. Soo Jae-pil never said you did the wrong thing, never condemned him. Later Koreans really, really did for what he did. This is him in Mr. Sunshine, condemning the King Kojong at this point. How can you send secret emissaries, secret ambassadors to The Hague, to Europe. There was a big international council meeting. King Kojong sent secret representatives there to show the Korean flag and say, hey, Korea should be independent. Korea is not a colony of Japan, not doing this. And the Koreans were not successful in doing this. One of the Koreans committed suicide there in Europe, I think, at the Paris exhibition about this. And then later Kim Wan-ik, attacking King Kojong, saying, why did you send those secret emissaries? You're a bad king. And they forced him by 1907, because of this, they forced Kojong finally to give up as king, to step down from the throne and make his son, Sunjong, though who was mentally deficient, make him the king. Did all this under Japanese pressure. Okay. He is actually listed then. His name is Lee Wan-yong, Lee. Today we spell L-E-E, but he spelled it Y-E. That's a Japanese way of spelling it and such. We know him, he's in Mr. Sunshine as Lee Wan-ik, but he called it Lee Wan-yong. Okay, he's one of the 5 Ulsa traders of 1905 who signed the Ulsa Treaty to let Japan take much power over Korea, and then one of the 7 Jongmi traders of 1907, 7 men who signed another treaty to make King Kojong step down and Sunjong become the emperor, but Sunjong under domination of the Japanese officially. One step more, and then finally in 1910, as Korea becomes a colony of Japan and there's no more royalty, they cancel Korean royalty and such. The 8 ministers who helped that happen, they're called the 8 Yulsul traders. Lee Wan-yong is the only man who's on all 3 lists. A real superstar of being a trader. He's one of the 5, one of the 7, one of the 8. He's the only one who made all 3 lists together. Some other guys made 2 lists, but only him and such. This is still an issue in Korea. It's still a thing that Koreans debate about, still talk about. Who was a traitor to who was it that was a traitor that betrayed our country to Japan, and then who was a hero, who was really fighting against Japan? This is very controversial in Korea, and in many cases it's impossible to know. There's no historical records. Those who fought against Japan did it secretly. As you see in Mr. Sunshine, by the end, it's a secret organization. So there's no records, there's no writing, there's no listing, hardly any. We don't know who was a member and who wasn't. Today, in South Korea and in North Korea, everybody says, oh, my grandfather, my great-grandfather was fighting against the Japanese. Sure he was. Nobody can prove it. But everybody claims that. And people say, oh, my great-grandfather, he didn't betray Korea. And people say, oh, you're a descendant of Lee Wan-yong. What? He was your great... No, he wasn't my great-grandfather. It was somebody else. I don't come from him. But it's very difficult to prove, from who? This goes to the courts. This has been a political thing in Korea right up to the Roh Moo-hyun administration, 2003, as a leftist government. They had another investigation trying to find out who is really the great-grandchildren of Lee Wan-yong, and try to punish them. Even the great-grandchildren, take away their property. Those who betrayed Korea, those 5 traitors, 7 traitors, 8 traitors, of course, many of them became rich, or were rich. They were powerful Yangban government minister guys. Many of them were rich during the Japanese occupation, and so they have land, they have still today, they have buildings that their great-grandchildren are the owner of the building, and Roh Moo-hyun administration taking away their property from these great-grandchildren. Not your building anymore, it's a government building. Take it away and sell it. Government took the money, things like this. They still do this, and they still reward patriots. Those who your great-grandfather fought against the Japanese, they still give them medals today, and they get some advantage in being hired by companies and getting into the good universities. like Yonsei and Seoul-dae Hakyo and such, Korea University. Not officially, but sure, that's why they're looking at the record. They'll see who is your grandfather, your great-grandfather. If your great-grandfather was a patriot against the Japanese, you will get some advantage. Still in Korea today, they still do this. They still do it in Europe too, like about the Nazi thing, like World War II. The French people still sometimes accusing each other, but not so much. Mostly in Europe, that's been settled. People say, okay, that's history. It doesn't matter for you as the great-grandchild, the great-great-grandchild. It doesn't matter anymore what your ancestor did. But in Korea here, it still does. They're still going on about this. And still has effect. This guy, Lee Wanrong, he was the last prime minister in 1910. He was the 7th prime minister in a modern prime minister sense. The 7th one and the last one, he signed the Korea annexation treaty instead of King Sunjong. This document is King Sunjong giving him the power of attorney. Do you know what that is? Power to act as a lawyer for you. You can be my lawyer. King Sunjong, signed this agreement making Lee Wanrong his lawyer with his legal power, and then Lee Wanrong signed this document again to make Korea a colony of Japan. This is how he did it. Now this is why Koreans say it was illegal. The whole thing was illegal, especially now Sunjong, again, he was an idiot, low IQ, mentally disabled person, so he had no power to give him the power to sign that agreement. And so it was illegal. The whole thing, making Korea a colony of Japan, was illegal.